This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. My name is Harry Wilkinson, and I am your host for this program that takes a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, media, international doings, just about everything that we interact with, everything we hear about through news, media, and so forth. We take a look at all of these things from a higher perspective, from what I call a spiritual perspective. The idea of our connectedness, our oneness, and our being part of something that is more than just the material world that we create. And that, in fact, we are on a level of higher existence, if you will, creating all of it for our, in a way, our own amusement, as callous as that might sound. Because it may sound callous to think about a concept where we are creating situations, for instance, where people lose their lives through violence, or people die or disappear in a plane crash. And it may sound callous to think that we create those things for our own benefit, for our own interaction, in a way, for our own game-playing spirit, if you will. However, it begins to feel less harsh if your belief is that there is no such thing as death, that these physical forms that we take are part of the game, and that we exist at a much higher level and are indestructible in our oneness, and that we play these games to experience these feelings of sadness and loss and pain and all of these things that at our highest level we can't and don't experience because they simply aren't real. And that helps us reach out to remember who and what we really are. It's a bit convoluted, but the idea is, just to long and short of it here, the idea is that if we created this world as a game and we put ourselves into it, we also put ourselves into a forgetful mode where we don't remember that we've created the game, and we don't remember that we are unlimited and unrestricted as beings. And not only don't we remember that, we are given a filter or a belief that counters that is exactly the opposite of that we are limited, weak, incapable, incompetent, all of those things. And that's part of the game. That's built into the game. And part of that game is to go through it and realize the truth of who you are. So that's kind of the idea. And just again, as I always do at the beginning of the show, because it, from the comments I get, the few that I do get, it seems like it bears repeating. This is not a religious program. I'm not talking about religious beliefs. I'm not coming from a particular set of religious dogma or belief systems. We do talk about religion, all kinds of religion, and how people use it and relate to it and so forth and so on. And we talk a great deal about the Pope and the things he's doing and the Dalai Lama, but this is not a religious program. And the essence of this program is that spirituality and religion are quite different and often work at cross purposes. Religion being an institution that seeks to continue its own existence, maintain itself, and isolate itself from others, other religious institutions, by setting itself above. Spirituality being a connectedness and an understanding of oneness at all levels. So, now that's out of the way, I'll continue with our show. We've got a lot to talk about. I have spoken over the past couple of years about this astrological transit involving Uranus and Pluto that began in 2012 and just ended in March of 2015. And during this period, I've spoken about how this is an age of social upheaval and turmoil. And what began in this period, I believe, as we're coming out of it, I'm beginning to see that what's started in that period of time is the beginning of a transition, of our spiritual transition, if you will. During that time, these things came to light all over the world. The Arab Spring, Ukraine and Russia, the Arab and Israeli and Palestinian conflicts, and everything is changing around these issues. New awareness is happening around all of these issues. In this country, income inequality has now reached a huge level of awareness. The conflict of authority as represented by the police over minority neighborhoods, the use of overwhelming force on African Americans and others by our authorities. Another issue that is just been illuminated by this transit that we went through. And these are all things that are beginning our transition. And of course, the economy, which is what we're going to talk about today a bit. So for the next, I don't know how many episodes of this program, we're going to be talking about the age of transition, because that is what I truly believe we are in right now. And rapidly so. I mean, certainly, and I talked about this the past couple of weeks, we're seeing this rapid transition in areas that we thought would never move. Ideas like on gay marriage and the Confederate flag, for instance, that whole story. And if you're not an African American or sensitive to those issues, you might not understand how pervasive, especially if you don't live in the South, how pervasive that image was. To walk down the street and be confronted with, Confederate flags all over the place, to see pickup trucks and whatnot driving by, waving these flags. To be an African American and know what that symbolizes. Know that symbolizes hatred towards you. It's like, it's like somebody waving a Nazi flag or wearing a swastika on their T-shirt. And lots of people doing that every day. There would be moral outrage if that was to happen. And yet for over 50 years, the Confederate flag symbol has just been waved in people's faces and told, you have no right to tell us that we can't use this symbol of hate to express our hatred towards you. Well, now that's changing, finally. At least as far as, publicly owned buildings, government buildings, and so forth, where that flag is rapidly coming down, and supermarkets, Walmarts, and such are making the decision that they're not going to sell that flag anymore. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. If you want to have symbols of hatred plastered around your home, you're welcome to do so. But in a civilized society, when you have to work with other people, when you have to deal with other people in the world besides you, awareness of what is offensive to other people is a crucial social skill. I don't want to get off on this tangent, but anyway, let me get back to this age of transition idea, because as I've said, for the next, I don't know how many shows, we're going to be talking about age of transition and the different aspects of our society that are transitioning. And today's episode, we're going to talk about the economy, not just the United States economy, but worldwide economy, because that's what is happening rapidly. And we're going to bring Greece into this whole thing. And I talked about it last week and some of the things they're doing. But we're also going to look at an article talking about what the author of this article in The Guardian calls post-capitalism. So there's some very good ideas that he gets to in that article. I don't agree with everything, but there are a lot of important ideas. And we'll also take a second look at the book that we we talked about it. This is several years ago on this program. The book is called Sacred Economics, and about how a different way of looking at our resources is what is not only needed and necessary, but what is happening, regardless of how hard we try to hold on to the old ways. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to get to some of the articles that we didn't get to last week. Particularly, I want to get to the article on antidepressants, because that's very important. A lot of people suffer with varying forms of depression, and the treatments can be worse than the disease in many cases. So we want to talk about that. And we'll get to those articles first. But first, let's get to Greece and move our way into the discussion that we're going to have on transitioning economics. So now Greece has agreed to accepting some very stringent, some would say draconian rules and basically austerity rules in order to get bailout funds to keep the Greek economy going. This after the Greeks had voted that they were not going to accept those demands and were considering leaving the Eurozone. Well, there really wasn't much heart behind that yet. I believe there will be. I believe that's an ongoing, evolving situation. But here's the basic duality going on here. The International Monetary Fund, of which we, the United States, are a part, has continued to suggest, I think a stronger word is necessary than suggest, has continued to insist that the Eurozone, particularly as led by Germany, who are really the strongest actors in the Eurozone right now, they are really strongly recommending, if not demanding, that Greece be given debt forgiveness. that some amount of that debt is going to have to be wiped out, because there's no way that it's going to be sustainable for them, and it will drag the Eurozone down as well. Well, the Germans, and we know how stubborn the Germans can be, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear anything about any debt forgiveness whatsoever. It all has to come through austerity measures, through taking away pensions from people, through raising taxes. Much of the situation Greece is in is simply due to what we know about income inequality and the rise of the super rich. There are very, very wealthy people who, if they were paying a fraction of the amount of money they have into the Greek economy, Greece would be doing quite well. But the very wealthy continue to take money out of the economy and not put it back in, and that's why Greece is where it is. And Wall Street have been very bad actors involved in this as well, creating these derivatives, the very things that blew up our economy in 2008. That's what they've been using in international business with Greece, so that for a while Greece did not even know how much debt they were in, because it got shuffled around. And all of this goes to really illustrate the illusory quality of what we think of as money. Money is energy. It isn't those bills or coins or what have you. And how you use that energy, which is, by the way, inexhaustible and endless. There's no non-supply of energy, of the energy that is prosperity, that is money. But because we're playing this game, the illusory game, we create exactly the opposite of what it really is, and we create limits. There's only so much, and after that, boom, that is the essence of our predicament here. That's the essence of income inequality, and it's the essence, certainly the essence of what's going on in Greece. We can take that out and apply it to everything else that's going on. And last week and a couple of years ago, I mentioned and talked about the growing ideal of Greek social supermarkets. These are local communities that are gathering together, growing their own produce, selling it at lower prices, taking the money and giving it to people who are deeply in need. These are the kinds of programs that come out of this transition we're going through, this revolution that we're going through, this clashing of wills, and it's just the beginning. So we're going to get into this article about how our money is transitioning, so let's look at this Guardian article first. And so here we are. Okay, so this gentleman, his name is Paul Mason, writing for The Guardian, is talking about the idea that technology, among other things, is creating this new route out of our old view of capitalism. And it's something that he has termed post-capitalism. I don't think it's post-capitalism. I think it's a transition to an entirely different perspective or worldview. But I don't want to quibble with words. He's got the right idea here, I think. And what he's talking about is what he's seeing now as these new behaviors and new values that are breaking through the old capitalism. And he compares it to the end of feudalism 500 years ago. If you aren't sure what feudalism is, it was basically an economy built on slave labor, where you had peasants working for very wealthy landowners, and they would work for food and small plots of land and things of that nature. So he compares the end of, and it was a system that had to go away because because of its inherent unfairness, and so he compares capitalism to this and says that it will be accelerated by the external shocks and shaped by the emergence of a new kind of human being. And that's really what is at the heart of all of these transitions. It's our spiritual transition. As I've said, there are no economic or political or military solutions to any problem. It's all a spiritual problem. And the only problem we have, the one problem we have is belief in illusions. But let me not get off on the tangent yet. So he claims in this article 3 major changes in information technology that have been brought about in the past 25 years that are making this post-capitalism possible. First, it's reduced the need for certain types of work and blurred the edges between work and free time, and loosened the relationship between work and wages. He talks about the coming wave of automation will hugely diminish the amount of work needed, not just to subsist, but to provide a decent life for all. Secondly, he says that information is corroding the market's ability to form prices correctly, because market prices are based on scarcity, while information is abundant. And there we go. There's that crux of the idea is scarcity thinking versus the understanding of abundance. So he quite rightly, I think, explains the system's defense mechanism against this abundance of information is to form monopolies. So we're seeing these giant tech companies merging and becoming these monoliths. But they can't last because they simply become unsustainable. By building business models and share valuations based on the capture and privatization of all socially produced information, these firms are constructing a fragile corporate edifice at odds with the most basic needs of humanity, which is to use ideas freely. So we're seeing that teeter and totter and about to fall. And thirdly, the spontaneous rise of collaborative production. Goods, services, and organizations are appearing that no longer respond to the dictates of the market and the managerial hierarchy. And that goes to the article I talked to you about last week on the Greek social supermarkets and how they're doing this. But he's talking about in a technological way things like Wikipedia, where you have free information edited and made by volunteers. And it's interesting to me, as far as Wikipedia is concerned, is that there's been this backlash against Wikipedia. Oh, don't go to Wikipedia because they have information that isn't true and uncited and so forth. And particularly among academics, there's been this strong resistance to Wikipedia, and it just simply isn't the case. Wikipedia is ongoing, evolving phenomena where people go in and they edit and re-edit and find citations where citations are needed. So the information evolves, but most of what you can find on Wikipedia is cited, and you can find exactly the sources that you need through Wikipedia. So anyway, but that's another resistance that we're having to these transitions. So all of these things are changing, and he talks about in Greece when a grassroots NGO mapped the country's food co-ops, alternative producers, parallel currencies, and local exchange systems. They found more than 70 substantive projects, including the Greek social supermarkets, and hundreds of smaller initiatives ranging from squats to carpools to free kindergartens. To mainstream economics, such things seem barely to qualify as economic activity, but that's the point. They exist because they trade, however haltingly and inefficiently, in the currency of post-capitalism: free time, networked activity, and free stuff. It seems a meager and unofficial and even dangerous thing from which to craft an entire alternative to global system, but so did money and credit in the age of Edward III. So, fascinating stuff. We're going to get to more of that next week. I also want to briefly tap into sacred economics and the idea that is now, even since I first talked about this on this program, has become a phenomena in Europe, which is the idea of negative interest rate, negative interest money. Negative interest money is money that loses value the longer it's held on to. And the idea is that this will stimulate the economy by making banks more anxious to make loans, because they're not going to make any money if they hold on to it. It's just going to lose value. Whereas if you loan it at a certain value point, you can make money back. It'll be a lesser amount, but won't depreciate as much as if you hold on to it. And this is something that a lot of people just go, huh? How can that work? And so the point that that is made in sacred economics, and this is a quote from his book here: negative interest money backed by things that are sacred in an ecological economy turns the intuitions of the age of usury on their head. It is utterly revolutionary, fundamentally altering the human experience. This transformation reverberates across all levels, from outer to inner, and from the economic to the spiritual. So our idea, as he says, of what value is, of what money is: thou shalt issue money only to those who will earn more of it. That's the way we've been going. But an idea that lowering interest rates below zero could help us goes completely counter to this idea that has been burned into our brains. So the example that he gives in the book is, if you let's say you go to a bank and you want to borrow money for a business, and you present the business plan and you say, if you lend me $1 million, I will earn $900,000 back in 4 years' time. So I'd like you to lend me $1 million at a negative interest, and I'll pay you back $900,000 in installments over 4 years. And the bank says, yes, we love your plan. Here's your money. And why would they agree to that? Well, because if they hold on to that $1 million and they don't loan it, it would depreciate at an even higher rate, possibly, let's say, 7%, as he gives in this book. So that after 4 years, all they would have left would be $740,000. So they're actually making money by lending the money, even though it's depreciating. And this concept is what the author of this book, and by the way, his name is Charles Eisenstein. That's what he sees as the key. That's what he sees happening, and it's happening in Europe. European banks many are now dealing in negative interest rates. So fascinating stuff. We're going to talk a lot more about that. I want to get into the antidepressant article though before we have to go, because as I say, I feel this is really important. There's been an evolving understanding of what, clinical depression means. For many years, it was treated with, tranquilizers to kind of keep people calm, and then through therapy, through, interaction with a therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist. Then somewhere in the 90s, there was this approach, there was this belief that somehow depression wasn't just a mood problem or an emotional problem or anything like that. It was just a brain problem. It was just caused by low serotonin levels in the brain. And so a whole series of drugs called SSRI drugs began to flood the market. And they were seen as safer to tranquilizers, and that they would help to remedy the chemical imbalance and restore the serotonin levels. Now, I know this because during this time, a family member of mine was going through serious depression. And this is the course of treatment that was being talked about at the time. However, there's been very little actual proof that this works. Now, according to this article, according to David Healy, head of psychiatry at the Hergest Psychiatric Unit in Bangor, North Wales, he writes, for patients, the idea of correcting an abnormality has a moral force that can be expected to overcome the scruples some might have had about taking a tranquilizer, especially when packaged in the appealing form that distress is not a weakness. Because depression was often seen as coming from your own weakness, or you're crazy, or that kind of thing. And what he's saying is that it should not be thought of as an emotional disorder at all. And the proposition here is that future research should conduct a concerted search for parasites, bacteria, or viruses that may play a causal role in the development of major depression. But they've always known that serotonin levels alone were not the cause. And while researchers have moved on from this, in practice, they are still doing this. This report says 70% of people on antidepressants don't have depression, at least clinical depression. When it was found that psychoactive drugs affect neurotransmitter levels in the brain, as evidenced mainly by the levels of their breakdown products in the spinal fluid, the theory arose that the cause of mental illness is an abnormality in the brain's concentration of these chemicals that is specifically countered by the appropriate drug. That was a great leap in logic. It was entirely possible that drugs that affected neurotransmitter levels could relieve symptoms even if neurotransmitters had nothing to do with the illness in the first place, and even possibly that they relieved symptoms through some other mode of action entirely. It's like arguing that fevers are caused by too little aspirin. What this report is finding is that antidepressants may permanently alter brain function, and not in a good way. So there's a lot more new information now about what's going on with depression. I always recommend, or I always say, talk to a therapist. Anybody and everybody can benefit from talking to a therapist. But I want to leave you with, and we're going to get back to, by the way, because I didn't get to finish that article, and we're just running low on time, so we're going to get back to that article. But for the time being, I want to leave you with 5 ways, and this comes from Dr. Andrew Weil's website, 5 ways you can boost your mood. The first way that he recommends is regular exercise. And he says there's no better method than regular aerobic exercise for rapidly alleviating depression. He recommends 30 minutes of physical activity at least 5 days a week. And number 2 is check your medications. Just like we're talking about in that article, they can be contributing to your depression rather than alleviating it if you have been given these pills. Cut out caffeine. And that's some new information I didn't know. Addiction to coffee and other forms of caffeine can often interfere with normal moods and aggravate depression. So caffeine does have some good benefits, by the way, but too much of it can interfere with your mood. He recommends acupuncture as a modality that can be useful in treating mood disorders, including depression, and meditation. So 5 ways you can boost your mood. And I think all of them are good, safe bets. But for now, I will have to leave you with hopefully some interesting thoughts. And we'll talk more about transitioning economy, and everything else